I like mustard on broccoli. Don't judge me. I like to put milk on my ice cream. Don't judge me. Okay? I like to shower at night and not in the morning. Don't judge me. I voted for people that didn't win in one election in my lifetime. Don't judge me. I used to like the Chicago Cubs in baseball. Don't judge me. I prefer to wear jeans, suits when I speak on Sunday mornings. I told you, don't judge me. Okay? I don't mind driving a foreign car. Don't judge me. Every once in a while, when I hit my thumb with a hammer, sometimes words that I don't normally use come out of my mouth. Don't judge me. Couldn't we all come up with a good list of stuff that we could say, right? That we do different than somebody else, or something that comes up as a topic, or something that we think. I use an iPhone. Don't judge me. I know some of you Android PC type people, and I know you're kind. Okay. I know what you're thinking when you hear me say, and I walk up here with an iPad on the stage. I know what you're thinking. You know what I'm talking about, right? People can judge no matter what it is. And we make those judgments based on usually things that are in our minds or our hearts. It has to do with maybe the way we see people, the way they look to us, maybe what we wear, what we might have on. I thought to myself, what could I have done today to have really made you think? I could have put on a toupee after many years of not wearing any hair, And some of you would go, what in the world is he doing? Trying to look younger, And I've figured out that I can't do anything to look younger. It doesn't matter. But it'd be easy to judge people based on things that would happen, right? Today, we live in a time where things are they're tumultuous at best when it comes to people passing judgment. And Jesus had a lot to say about what judgment is. And it has to do a lot with what we want to call culture. And so today I want to talk to you a little bit about one of the scariest things, it seems, for a lot of people who are established in the way they think, established in the way that they consider God or consider religion or consider the Bible or all of those things. They seem scary because it seems as if the culture and everything around us seems to be attacking things that maybe Christians or the church or whatever has held on to for so long, and it's hard. So I want to give you kind of a definition of what culture is. This is not necessarily, this is just right off, Merriam-Webster or whatever, but you get the idea. A culture has to do with all the ways of life, including arts, beliefs, and institutions of a population that are passed down from generation to generation. That's what culture is. So the things that maybe we're passing on to the next generation, and then they take their turn and twist on it, and they change it up, but that's culture. We could go back, and how many of you have ever eaten at a 50s-style diner, okay? All right? How many of you ate at that diner originally when it was in the 50s? I'm kidding, okay? But you get the idea, right? You go back and you see the nostalgia and all these things from the past. I actually literally wore Chuck Taylor Converse All-Star shoes. I wore those to actually play basketball on a team, out here. They're not used for all these different colors of them now and all that, but it's all changed, right? That's changed. It's a twist on it. All that's part of culture. the things that we once did. I mean, music. Look at music alone and how much it's changed over the years, all right? You definitely don't turn on the top 40 and hear Benny Goodman anymore, okay? One person knew who Benny Goodman was. That's great. You know, you kind of get the idea, right? You don't necessarily. So if I were to throw out other names, you know, you don't turn on the radio much anymore and hear Bon Jovi. Okay, some people know who that is. Even younger people. Wow, aren't you slick? So culture is amazing, though, how it shifts and changes, but how we get so used to it. And we want it to stay the same. Nobody likes change. Many people really revolt against change. But when we're talking about culture, we're talking about a list of things that change within that. And things like symbols, language, the norms, things that are normal today weren't normal before. You ever notice that? How things that we now think are normal, they're just not normal anymore. And then values, things that used to be values. My dad he was a tough one on this for me. And my dad had a tiger eye ring. Do you know what that is? It's a ring with a little stone on top of it. And he would turn that ring around with the stone facing downward in his palm. And he would pop me on the back of the head if I didn't open the door for my mother or any other woman. Okay? I was at the mall not too long ago. Yeah, there are people who actually still go to the mall. And I went to the mall not too long ago, opened the door for a lady, and I think she was mad because she went to the other set of doors and opened the door for herself. Now see, if my dad had seen that, he probably would have popped her in the head with the ring. You get the idea? Values change over time. Values are things that we hold dear and we want to practice and follow through with, but they change. And when they change, it can scare us. Any of these things. When these things change, it can scare us. When I first went to Cuba, everyone was speaking Spanish. I didn't know much Spanish, taco, burrito, that's about all I knew. And you go and everyone is speaking and they're talking to you. They want to converse with you, but they don't get a lot back. And you're trying to figure out how to do this. It's really hard. It's kind of scary, especially when they're asking for your passport and they wonder why you're bringing in all these heavy bags and what are in them and all this stuff. And you're trying to converse and explain to them why. Artifacts. How many of you have a junk drawer somewhere in your house full of stuff you had years ago? Okay. Or something that you hang on to, Something that you hang on to that you don't know why you hang on to it, but you have it, It's an artifact. We will do this many times by putting museums in place, And I watched a video here not too long ago of two guys that I think they were like 14, 15 years old, and they gave them a rotary dial phone and asked them to use it. And they didn't really know what to do with it. They looked at it, and it was kind of funny. And I got to think they were set up for that, because isn't it just logical you pick the thing up and dial? But no, it's not. Not when you've been used to a screen that gives you all the information you've ever wanted right there in front of you. Matter of fact, my phone has more data, or has more memory in it than my first PC did that sat on my desk. It's amazing how things have changed. All of this is constantly changing. Over the last few weeks, John has introduced this idea of scary stuff, because when things start to change, it becomes scary to us. And he started out with a message that basically gave us this bottom line. Move toward the mess. You've got to move toward the mess. If we're going to actually live in this world, you can't isolate yourself. You can't insulate yourself enough. Culture will come to you. You will experience it. And when you kind of, put your head in the sand, or you run from it, or you try to hide from it, or even try to bring the people that are closest to you in so that they don't have to experience the change, it makes us ill-fitted to actually live in the world we're living in. So you have to move toward the mess. It's actually a principle that Jesus taught. And then, not only that, but last week did a great job of sharing with us that we have to prioritize relationships over being right. I like the fact that he's an addict when it comes to being right, I tend to be that way too, which makes our conversations very entertaining. And you can imagine, all right, if you're trying to talk to someone and you know they're wrong, all right, you know they're wrong, okay? And the tendency is to want to try to make sure they understand why they're wrong and why you're right. But usually when you do that, you give up the relationship, which then shuts the whole thing down, and you never get to prove your point. So incredible. And today, there is a unique term that's being used. It's been used for a lot. There's a bank with the name. There's different things. But many people are using the word or the term ally as being something that's really important to be able to relate to other people, especially as people are going through some of the most, again, like I said, tumultuous times where they're trying to find their way, their identity. They're trying to figure out what's going forward, but they're looking for an ally. And I want to propose to you today that even though this might in some ways come up as a negative term for somebody who is clinging to values that they've had in the past, this term, the way it's being used, may be hard for you to swallow, to think of this, but I believe the church ought to be the greatest ally of people. That shouldn't shock us. It shouldn't be something that we think. It's almost a logical conclusion that we want to be an ally. Now, please don't read into this. Don't start tweeting words and things I say because, I might say something stupid up here, okay? But the whole point is I want to try to find some things that make sense within the culture we live in. So it's not scary. It's actually something that we kind of want to engage. We move toward. We do everything we can do to be a part of it and still have the influence and the relationship with people to be able to show them who Jesus is. This is important. I mean, this is critical. So people that are looking for an ally, they want someone to say they're an ally with them in what they're doing or what they're going through. It's usually because they're saying, I need someone on my side. I need somebody who will be with me. I need somebody who will stand alongside of me. Even though I'm different and I'm doing something different, they're wanting an ally. They want someone to stand on their side. Now, if we were all honest, that's exactly what we all want. We want to have someone on our side. But then on top of that, you might say, I need someone to make a real difference in my life. So with all of that thought, with these thoughts in mind, if people are looking for an ally, if they're really wanting someone, then we have to be very cautious about how we move forward in the way we conduct ourselves in our relationships with people. And so this is what we do. We turn to a teacher, someone who's reliable, someone who had eyewitnesses to his life, someone who saw everything that he went through and what he taught and how he backed it up, and that's Jesus. And Matthew, a former tax collector, which I think is really funny because tax collectors were shoved away. They definitely didn't have allies at all. He's the one who records this very important sermon that Jesus taught. And he was teaching about his kingdom. He was teaching about everything that had to do with him. And so the idea comes from the Sermon on the Mount. And at the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount, you actually see this listing of people who are blessed because of certain things in their life, if they were to follow through with the things Jesus was talking about. And that's called the Beatitudes. That's right at the beginning in chapter 5. So we're going to actually look at one of those Beatitudes in a few minutes, but we're going to see the setup for it at pretty much the conclusion, coming to the end of the sermon. He's starting to wrap it up, all right? It might be that time when the people in the crowd started looking at their watches like all of you do. I'm kidding. So you get the idea, all right? Jesus is wrapping this sermon up, and he's teaching us about what it truly means to be an ally, putting relationships over being right, and why that's a value to Jesus. So I want to take you to chapter 7 of Matthew, and I want you to see these verses. You can look there. You can find it on the YouVersion app, on the church app, whatever, and follow along with me if you'd like. It starts out, and you've probably heard these verses before, but I'm going to try to move through it with just very concise statements that help you understand what it is. And I had to come to a point to understand it myself. And so I want you to follow with me here as we go through this. It says, do not judge, or you too will be judged. This is Jesus talking. He says, do not judge, or you too will be judged. And none of us like to be judged. Nobody likes to be judged for who we are. Nobody likes to be judged. If we've made a decision and we think we're right, nobody wants to be judged for that. I mean, I don't. Do you? I mean, I don't like to be judged. You know, just because some of those things I shared with you at the beginning. You know, I don't want to be judged by that, but people have judged me for every one of those. Try putting mustard on your broccoli in front of people and they don't go, ooh. Okay? Don't judge me. Okay? Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Now, he's actually using this verse as a way to show what he meant by one of the Beatitudes. We'll look at it here in a minute, and I'll show you the difference of how one way of thinking is another. But most of the time, the reason people judge other people, the reason is this, because there's differences. And it can happen when Christians or when the church collectively can make a statement about something and they make a judgment. Many of us in this room have experienced that, where we've been a part of a Christian organization or institution that is a part of the culture, and their culture was to point the finger at the wrong things I was doing or you were doing or whatever that happened. And we felt that. It was almost as if that was part of the church culture to feel that way. And actually, I'm not trying to downplay the fact that the Bible says that there are right things in life to do and wrong things in life not to do. I'm trying to get the overall atmosphere of what it is to actually interact with each other and what Jesus was trying to make sure was clear. So do not judge, or you too will be judged. And then he explains that. The same way you judge others, you're going to be judged. And isn't it true that we kind of do this? Think about the differences that we could actually judge people on, especially when coming inside the walls of this building. And the church gathers, the people gather together, and we start looking at each other, and then we start to invite people who maybe don't go to church or haven't had church or anything in their life. They don't know what it's about, and they start to come in, and they come here, and they maybe look and wonder if they're being judged based on who they are, or how they look, or what they're doing in their life. And so the differences could be this. There could be several of them, but there could be ideology. You know, that's where we get into the politics of life. And it can be sometimes not only politics, but it can be the ideology of how we live our lives and the decisions we make and what we do and all of that. And so ideology comes down to it. And some of those things, people are struggling with finding identity in their life. And so a lot of their ideology or what they've been taught has led them down a path of making decisions of how they choose to live their life. Even to the point that they'll drastically change themselves in one way or another. Appearance, whatever it takes to change themselves to feel like they belong or that they have allies, people that are on their side. They'll do whatever is necessary. People are going to extremes because of ideology. And then there's theology. That happens when we come into a place where we're with other people that will say they believe that God exists, and they have all different plans and ideas. And the older I get, the more I realize theology is not necessarily what the Bible teaches. Theology is how we take the Bible and turn it into what we think it says. Okay, hear that. Please don't tweet, Greg doesn't believe in theology anymore. Okay? Because I very much do. But I want to tell you that it can easily become a foundation for people to argue and people to judge based on how a person thinks in their relationship with God. And you might say, well, isn't it my right to judge somebody? I think we need to be careful of how we're using that term. And then philosophy. You know what philosophy is? It's how you think. And the things that you think and the mind processes that bring you there and the reasoning behind it and what brings you to the point of making the decisions. That's philosophy. And then the last one is worldview. And I tend to think that this one is the one that's messed up the most. We tend to think that there is such a thing as taking the world, the whole globe, and we have no idea what happens in other parts of the globe, but we end up with this whole idea of how the world ought to be operating. And you know, most of these, whenever there's conflict and difference and it comes out, it's usually because we are selfishly driven to have our own ideas and principles that we stand for and that we're right on, okay? I'm right. You can't change my mind. I know this part of life, and that's what it is. And so we tend to do it. I'll just tell you, judgmental attitudes magnify differences. Judgmental attitudes magnify differences. Exactly what Jesus was trying to get at. It was a summary statement that he made there at the beginning. Judge not, or you will be judged. You're going to be judged the same way that you judge other people. And he's trying to get the point across that it's not about whether or not you can identify that there's right or wrong being done. It has to do with how we treat someone else in the process. So I take you back to that sermon in Matthew 7. This is what it says. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? Kind of this idea of using an illustration of trying to care for somebody else or point out something that is a flaw in someone else when you have one that is quite larger than that. Matter of fact, I'll take you even to the next verse, and it goes this way. How can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when all the time there is a plank in your own eye? I figured the best way was to illustrate. And so I do it this way. I'm here today to tell you, you've got something in your eye. Don't you understand it? Can't you feel it? It should be obvious to you. It's right there in front of you. You can't see that speck? Man, that's driving me nuts. Let me get that out for you. Hold still. Hold still. What? What's the problem? Matter of fact, the more I look out here, the more specks I see in every one of your eyes. Matter of fact, they're these tiny little things, but man, they make you look bad. They make you look dumb. Kind of absurd, isn't it? But the idea is, Jesus saying, when we judge other people, it's as if we see these little tiny minor things about them, and we have forgot to do the most important thing of all, and that's to look at ourselves. We have to make sure that ourselves, every time we see someone out of step with culture, or with life or culture, whatever they're going through, they're making these changes, whatever, we look at them, it ought to make us reflect ourselves at what is going on in our own life. Matter of fact, he even uses a strong term. We heard it last week too. He uses it several times in this message, and I'm surprised, that he used this term, and the people just kept listening to him because he was in their face with it. He said this in the next verse. It says, "You hypocrite." Yikes. First take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Take care of yourself. When you take care of yourself, you put yourself in a frame of mind that allows you then to interact with other people that may be going through difficulties, and you might actually relate to the issue that they may be going through, so much so that you're able to talk with them and everything because you've experienced it yourself. Not because you know better, not because you have a list of rules that you follow or values that you possess that are so superior to theirs that you can point out how wrong they are. You do it because you realize how sinful and wrong you are first, and you have to get those things out of your own life long before you ever start judging someone else. Matter of fact, I don't even know that judging was something Jesus was saying. He kind of says, that's kind of my job. So one of the things I think is great, and just think of it from this standpoint, judgment of others begins when we compare ourselves to someone else. It all starts with comparison. When you start to compare somebody else to us, let me tell you a term that's used in church many times. It's the term holiness. Holiness is one of those things where we feel that we have to protect holiness. And I would just say, holiness in a person's life, especially a follower of Jesus, is not about something you do, it's about something you are. Okay? Holiness has nothing to do with this long list and going through and doing things. It's who you are deep inside. Are you following Jesus to the point that you'll do whatever's necessary, remove the things that shouldn't be there, and put in the things that should be? That's what holiness is. And really, none of us should be regarded as the holiness police, okay? We're not there to walk up to other people and go, man, you're just not very holy. You know? Come on. Hey, you're not very holy. Just wanted you to know that. Okay? That's not my job. My job's not to tell him. My job is to let God be the holiness police in my life and show me the things that are wrong. And God's never acted like a policeman to me. He's gentle. He has been good to me. He points it out when I open my heart. He's always right there to show me. But I should never take on the responsibility. Matter of fact, it kind of goes against the beatitude that he shared. In Matthew 5, let me show you. Matthew 5, blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. See, it's kind of the opposite. Don't judge or you'll be judged. Here he says, blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. The idea is that what do we do when we see other people? We all want mercy, so we need to show mercy to other people. Whenever we step in to tell someone else and judge someone else that they're not holy, or that they're not measuring up to God's standard, or really, isn't it more our standard? And we tell them that, and we push out, or we push them away, or we don't want them to be a part of things. We're scared of them, or we're scared of the situation or the circumstance. It becomes that scary stuff we don't want to encounter. And what do we try to do? Listen to this. This is important. We end up usurping God's authority, or we try. You'll never do it. But we end up trying to usurp God's authority to be the one to judge, to be the one to do this. God is the only one who sits in the position of being able to judge any of us. And you know what? God himself uses mercy when he looks at us and judges us. You know how I know? Because he sent Jesus to die for us. Long before any of us had ever sinned, and especially the people back then and the people who had sinned, he already knew their problems, and he could have said, I don't want to do this for them. They've not done. They weren't holy. They weren't trying to live a right life. No. God said, I love them, and I want to restore them, and I'll do anything I have to do. I'll give my whole life for this. And that's exactly what he did. He showed mercy. So I wanted to tell you, this is what mercy really is. Mercy intentionally moves toward what is different. Mercy will always move toward what is different. If something is different, the first response of a Christ follower ought to be to show mercy. The first response when we see somebody doing something counter to our values is to show mercy. That's how we actually take the step. And you might say, but when do they ever figure out that what they're doing is wrong? Whenever God tells them it's wrong. Okay? It's not my job to tell them what's wrong unless they ask me. And if they ask me, I'm going to show them in mercy. I'm not going to show them because I know I'm right. I want to make a difference in their life. And the only thing that will help them in making a difference is going to be showing them mercy because Jesus said so. Now, I want to take you to a verse, and I wrap up with this. Verse 6. This is one that everybody uses, and most of us don't have any clue what it's meaning. Okay? This is great. It says, do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces. The point is that if you're going to show mercy to people, if you're not going to judge them, if you're going to judge them and you're going to try to turn their ideas to believe your ideas, you're going to try to force an issue with people. Many of them, if you're trying to force them, it will go nowhere. It will be like shoving it down their throat. If you're here this morning and you are really skeptical of faith today, you're not going to do it because I told you this is what you should believe. And I'm right and you're wrong. See, that's judgment. But if I say, you know what, my life needed mercy, and I found someone who gave it to me, and his name was Jesus. He loved me, he died for me, he rose again to give me new life, and he offered it to me freely, took me the way I was. I didn't have to do anything, I didn't have to change. He took me even knowing how different I was, and all the things that I was suffering through and going through, he took me the way I was. So I just take you back to this. It is not our responsibility to decide if someone deserves mercy. It's not my job to go around and say, well, that person's a dog. That person's a pig, and I'm not going to share anything good with them. Have you heard what they've said? Have you seen what they posted? Have you seen have you seen that interview with them on blah, 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 blah? Okay. No, point is that it's not our responsibility to decide if someone deserves mercy. That's God's responsibility. And God says everyone does. Everyone. It's not our job to judge them. It's not our job to come in and be the holiness police. It's not our job to decide whether or not they need mercy or not. It's not for us to decide. That's God's authority. And my job is not to look at other people and compare and say, I'm much better than they are. At least my life's not as messed up as hers or his. It has nothing to do with that. Matter of fact, you need to say, God, thank you for mercy. Help me show mercy to that person so that they see you, not me, but they see you and the mercy you have to offer. If you forget everything I've said today, which may be likely, I'll say this, remember this. Focus on making a difference rather than making a point. Focus on making a difference rather than making a point, because that's what Jesus did. Jesus came in and he preached this sermon and it rocked their worlds. It changed the way people thought. It made religious people angry because of what he was suggesting. We can no longer judge people. Well, how will we keep the rotten people out? And how will we keep the group of us pure? How will we? It all comes down to the fact that that's God's job to do. And so when we get together like this, there's not one person that you look at square in the eye or not that doesn't need and deserve to see God's mercy in their life. We don't deserve, I take that back. We don't deserve mercy, but God gives it to us. And that's the critical thing. See, I can say stupid things. Don't judge me, okay? The last part is this. We will make a difference by showing mercy and by intentionally moving toward what is different. So in our life today, scary things all around you. You're like, how in the world can I make it through? How can I deal with this stuff? I don't know how to deal with it. This person is so different and the issues that they're facing and all the problems that they're going through. And I could go through a list. You're like, well, tell us who those people are. No, not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. You know why? Because the minute I start to say a list of people and things that people are experiencing, you know what I'm doing? Starting to judge them. I'm labeling them. They need an ally. They need an ally who will make a difference in their life. An ally that will point them to the mercy of one who loves them more than life itself, Jesus. So what's our response to people in the culture today when we get scared of the things we face? The culture is changing rapidly and we see people going against things. What do? The greatest thing we can do is to show them mercy. I want to encourage you as you leave today. I want you to think about that one or two people that are in your life right now, that it's easy for you to judge. And if you're wondering, am I really judging them or not? Just, do you ever compare? Do you ever make a comparison of how they're living their life opposed to yours or your standards? Have you thought maybe that you've got a bigger 2x4 coming out of your eye than they have a speck coming out of theirs? And it might be better to just say, God, thank you for the mercy in my life, and may I show that mercy to them. Don't try to make a point. Make a difference. Make a difference. Show them the mercy that Jesus offers all of us. I want to pray with you. Please pray. God, I'm grateful for the time we spent here together. It's been great. And Lord, this is a difficult thing to talk about because I think we all find ourselves judging each other all the time. We make judgment calls on things that we think we could do better, or things that we see people do that affects us and we just are angry with them and we just wield all kinds of judgment at them. God, you said we shouldn't judge. Or we know there's wrong and right things to do in life. But people are never going to change because we try to make a point with them. And we can't just think that we're going to force it on them because they're just going to turn on us. Just like that verse says, Lord. It's like dogs and pigs. And Lord, that's not the point. We have such a great mercy to share. You've shown it to many of us in this room. And Lord, there's not one person in this room that mercy has not been created for. You made it for them, all of us. So Lord, I pray that it'll be real in their life today. And Lord, there's people we're going to encounter today, tomorrow. We may even encounter them before we leave this room that are different from us, difficult for us. But God, we can't judge. You know, you get in their life and you take care of the things that maybe are there. But Lord, just first of all, talk to us about the wrong in our life that we need to make right with you. And then, God, I pray that you'll help us to show mercy, especially those one or two in our lives that we know they're looking for an ally. They're looking for someone to come alongside them. They need a friend, and a friend would show mercy. That's what you told us. Thank you, Jesus. It's in your name I pray. Amen.